Alright, so today's video is going to focus on Metagross. Alright, so Metagross is probably, in far as Master Premier, the most popular mon you've seen. It's really good. It's definitely the best mon in Master League Premier. And there's a reason why there's so many Pokemon, or like so many trainers are trying to counter it. Specifically, like you see a lot of Rhyperiors with Mudslap, or even the Excadrills. A lot of things want to cover Metagross because Metagross is just so powerful. Metagross can single-handedly wipe an entire team by itself as long as it has energy or shield advantage. So Metagross is a Steel Psychic Pokemon. As you see, it has incredibly good stats, mainly the attack and defense, especially attack. Steel and Psychic is a very strong typing, and there are very few that really rival it in Premier Master League. For example, there aren't a lot of fire users. You don't see a lot of like Charizards. You don't see a lot of like Fire Spin users. What you do see that want to counter Metagross a lot is probably ground types. So you see a lot of like Mudslap users, etc. There's also a bunch of like dark type users. Not really like dark specific, but as you see Gyarados, there's a lot of Gyaradoses you see against it because of Crunch. And the fact that Gyarados kind of hardwalls doesn't really necessarily hardwall Metagross, because Metagross can actually still close out against Gyarados in certain scenarios. Now, where it comes off with not only having few weaknesses or few things that really give it a problem in Master Premier Cup, it also has a ton of resistances. Togekiss dies. Anything flying dies. Yes, you resist Dragon. You resist a ton of things like Dragon Breath, Dragon Claw, etc. You double resist Psychic, so Confusion users, if you try to use Confusion in Master Premier, probably not going to work against a Metagross. You also resist Steel and Rock type, so Meteor Mashes are resisted by Metagross itself, so in the mirror, a lot of Metagrosses run Earthquake just for the purpose of killing other Metagrosses, just because of ground. Yes, one Earthquake it won't completely yeet your Metagross to the next dimension, but it will get pretty dang close. So, like I said, there's a lot of resistance. It has a ton of resistances, great stats, and it's just a monster. Now, the thing about Metagross that makes it really difficult, it's kind of expensive. 75k dust. And not only that, unless you did Beldum Community Day, which was many moons ago, or like the December Community Day after that, it's not likely you have a lot of Beldums, or more importantly, like Hundo Beldums. Like me, I got a Hundo from the Community Day. We actually found a Hundo Beldum during Community Day, and I was with my friends. It was nuts. And sure enough, like in the future, here we go. Hundo Metagross, and then Master Premier comes out. But Metagross is one of my favorite monsters to use for Master Premier just because overall, as you see, great stats, great resistances. There are still weaknesses. A lot of things do come out to try to beat Metagross or have a chance against it. So a lot of teams really do try to cover Metagross. But for the most part, Metagross is freaking monstrous. As you see, Womps out at level 40, Womps out at a monstrous 37,491. And if you best buddy it, it's even better. It's also shiny. Its shiny's been out since Beldum Community Day. Sweet shiny, great stats, great resistances, and just a whole lot of power is why Metagross really just is the strongest mon in Master Premier Cup. Now, as far as you see in Master League, on Master League Premier Cup, the number one, of course, is Metagross. It leads in all categories. Well, not lead, but as a closer in the Switch, it's at 100%. In other words, a Metagross in the back is extremely powerful, covers a lot of things, and like I said, it creates a lot of scenarios where even if you do resist it, Metagross can come out with the W. So Metagross beats Togekiss, Dragonite. Pretty much most fighters, like, they can still beat you in certain scenarios, and Mamoswine. So especially Togekiss. Togekiss is what Metagross targets the best, because if you lock in a Metagross versus Togekiss, it's pretty much GG's unless you can land a Flamethrower on a Metagross. And even if you do, you don't even completely KO Metagross. Like Togekiss, you could, there are so many scenarios you could do. You could farm a Togekiss up to like, you could over farm a Togekiss, get a Meteor Mash and some change, and like take it out. It's like nuts. So Metagross is extremely powerful overall. Its Shadow even has play, but the regular version's probably what you have as a perfect, and it definitely does the most damage. It does a lot of damage. It's number one overall, and it stayed this way since old Master League, since Master Premier Cup came out last season, I believe. Yeah, since it came out, I think season 3 or season no, I think yeah, last season. It's really good. Okay. In the lead, Metagross is not at its best. A lot of people do like leading with Metagross. Here's the problem. There's a lot of things that beat it in the lead. For example, Gyarados, Magnezone, Garchomp. Gyarados, Magnezone, Garchomp, and even Swampert, these are all really relevant leads. Now, not to say there's not a problem, because they're also like what Metagross wins against. These are popular leads as well. So it really just depends. Like Metagross does do well in the lead. However, it's best used in the switch or the closer. In the closer, it's number 2. Last to its Shadow. I would definitely just use a regular one. There's no real difference. If you look at the comparisons, there's no real like titanical difference between the Shadow and the regular one. The regular one, you do have a better matchup in the closer versus Garchomp because you actually KO it, but we'll go over that more. But it still loses against pretty much the same things. The Shadow and the regular version do have like identical losses. Like it's a very minor difference. And it's not likely you have a perfect Shadow Metagross. If you do, I would use it just because it's really good. But at the same time, most of the time, like you kind of do need that bulk in certain scenarios with Metagross. As a switch, and the best thing too about the regular version, it's also the best switch in the game. Nothing stops Metagross. Metagross fundamentally is the best switch in the game. It will get you shields. Like even if they do happen to have like a Snorlax or whatever, it will grab you shields. Because 2 shields, because if a Snorlax must use a shield to beat Metagross. And Metagross, as you see, it has strong ratings even against Swampert. Like I said, you will take a shield Metagross. You will take a shield. Unless you don't with Energy Lead, you pretty much will take a shield. There's like not many things in here that have a chance against you. And again, with Swampert, you will have Energy Lead. So like I said, you will take a shield against Swampert. And there's a lot of things that you beat. But like I said, in the Metagross is best used in the back. You've probably seen it led a lot, but in all seriousness, Metagross in the back, in the closer, as a switch, is a monster. It's really, really good. And you see it featured in many teams, even on ppoke.com. Alright, so here's Metagross. I put Metagross, both the Meteor Mash and the Psychic version. Psychic and Earthquake have been like a really popular moveset. There's nothing wrong with Psychic. The only problem is if you don't have Meteor Mash, there are things that Metagross will flip. So there are things that flip. And because of the sheer damage of Meteor Mash, in my opinion, Meteor Mash is better than Psychic. Psychic does cover your weaknesses, but most of it, what threatens Metagross is Meteor Mash just does so much damage. Like, you'll see what happens. So here's the 2 shield. And you're going to be Conkeldurr, see what happens. Even if you have Psychic, you still lose against Conkeldurr just because you get outpaced. And you're going to lose against Charizard. You lose against Dragonite in the 2 shield. So this is something that's really interesting. Yes, Dragonite beat you in the 2 shield, but you're going to grab both shields. So you could grab both shields. Like, you don't have to shield this. You could go down, you could actually go down a shield. So if you look at Sandbox mode, Metagross, if you don't shield this attack, watch what happens. Update this. See, you still live. So you don't have to, you could actually, they have to shield both of your Meteor Mashes or they die. So if we take it off Sandbox mode, redo it. And the Dragonite has to shield both of your shields. So you can opt not to shield this. So you can go to Sandbox mode. You can opt not to shield that Dragon Claw. Yes, Dragonite will win, but you'll still grab both shields. So this is a play you could do. You could against Dragonite, because Dragonite's one of your popular leads. So against Dragonite, here's what you want to do. You have the option of either taking both of their shields and farming Dragonite, or you could you beat it outright. So you have to make decisions. So you're either going to win shield or switch against Dragonite. I've done it a lot of times where I like Dragonite lead a lot, so my Dragonite's beaten Metagross a lot in the lead. But I have to use 2 shields, so it's really up to you. Do you want to go up 2 shields, 2-0, and then, or however you want to play this matchup? It's completely up to you. Now, that's the Dragonite matchup. That's probably the one you're going to see the most. If you see Garchomp run, you don't want to be in there with Garchomp. You also don't want to be in there versus Gyarados. These are the two things that check you. This is why Metagross is not a great lead. Dragonite beats you. Garchomp beats you. Gyarados beats you. Even Machamp beats you in the lead. So Machamp will beat you in the lead as long as it expends both shields. So Machamp, Metagross, Magnezone, that's a big one. Magnezone, Rhyperiors with Mud Slap will get you. I've seen those a lot. Even Snorlax, Shadow Snorlax to be specific. You beat the regular one, but you barely beat it, so it's not very comfortable. And Swampert. So in other words, there's just way too many things that beat Metagross in the lead. So not really recommend as lead. Still very strong. Like I said, still very strong in the lead, but it's best used on a switch. Just because if you see those matchups, I'll show you, you're going to take shields. For example, you look at Swampert. You get Metagross versus Swampert. Swampert has to use both shields. So you can do the same thing with Dragonite. You can opt not to shield a Hydro Cannon, and you'll still take both shields. See what I mean? So it's still gonna do heavy damage. Yes, Swampert will have a huge energy advantage, but you can take both shields. Because at the end, they still have to Earthquake you. So you could go up 2-1. So you could opt to just take one. You could take one in the face. You could shield one Hydro Cannon and then just take the rest because you're gonna win CMP. So it's really up to you how you want to play Swampert. Like I said, still great in the lead. That's why it's a great switch. You still have play against its weaknesses. For example, here's Magnezone. If you do switch into a Magnezone or Magnezone switches into you, Magnezone needs to expend both of their shields. There's no choice. You won't get yeeted by one Wild Charge. So one Wild Charge does 82 damage. It's gonna take 2 Wild Charges to kill you. Meanwhile, you can get to a Meteor Mash or 2 to take out this monster. Especially if you call the bait. If you call the bait and they go with a straight Wild Charge, watch what happens. You look at that. Look at how close this matchup is. You're left with now their Magnezone is left with a ton of HP, but you could farm it down, and they have to give up Switch. So that's just how prominent that, especially, there's a lot of ways you could play it. Because Meteor Mash against a weakened Magnezone hurts a lot. Does a lot of damage. You don't want to take it. But like I said, takes a lot. If you lose the lead, switch in Metagross. Metagross will give you shield advantage. And then you can use something like Magnezone to sweep. It's a very, actually, Magnezone and Metagross are like the double steel typing. Double steel is a very common theme in Master Premier. So you'll have Metagross with Magnezone, and then you'd put like Garchomp or Swampert at a lead. It's very popular just because you lose the lead, swap in Metagross, get shield advantage, sweep with the back. It's that simple. Now in the one shield, like things pretty much stay the same. In the ones, there's not many changes. Actually, things stay almost exactly the same with the exception of you being Conkeldurr still. Well, you beat Dragonite in the one shield. Because Dragonite can't take a Meteor Mash. As you see here, they block 1, and Meteor Mash does 100 damage. They won't live from all the bullet punches. So you will win the ones against Dragonite convincingly. Other than that, that's really the only notable matchup you flip heavily. That and probably Machamp and Scizor. Scizor is kind of bait dependent though. You have to be able to beat. You have to bait with Meteor Mash. Actually, never mind, I'm wrong. You don't have to bait at all. Just see how powerful this thing is? You actually don't have to bait at all. You can just go straight Meteor Mash and win it. That's the one shield. And then this is the closer. So the switch in the closer is where Metagross shines. And in the closer, Metagross beats Conkeldurr, Dragonite, Electivire. It beats everything but like things that either resist it or it's weak to. For example, Garchomps, Gyaradoses, Gengars, Metagross. Well, Metagross and Shadow Metagross, they're gonna simultaneously KO. If you have energy lead, you beat them. So as long as you have energy lead, you will beat a Metagross in a closer because an Earthquake does kill. So as you see, Earthquake does 140 damage. If you are up energy, just be aware of this. If you are up energy, one bullet punch is 7 energy. So say you have your starting energy, you have 7 energy, you will win. You'll win this matchup. Watch. And then you win. All right. So remember what I said? Metagross can sweep entire teams. So this is Metagross with a shield. So as long as if Metagross has shield advantage, watch. You beat everything but Shadow, Snorlax, and Swampert. Now, the Psychic version does beat Charizard. But this is the thing about Psychic versus Meteor Mash. You pretty much beat everything You don't see a lot of Charizard, so if you're in this scenario, it's kind of rough. But you'll lose against Charizard, you lose against Swampert, and Snorlax. Now, if you have 2 shields, this is where it gets interesting. Because up 2 shields, Metagross beats everything. Nothing beats Metagross in the 2 shields. Both variants. And Metagross has 2... If Metagross has 2 shields, it's very likely you're going to sweep your opponent. And that's... Yeah. As long as you have 2 shields, Metagross can sweep your opponent. That's why there's a lot of strategies that will try to take out Metagross right away and then sweep whatever's in the back. Because if you take out their Metagross, your Metagross can come and wreck it. But it's a very dangerous strategy. So just be very mindful of like where you want to play this. So in summary, Metagross is, like I said, in the switch and the closer, Metagross is stupid strong. It's no wonder why it's literally the strongest, the best mod in Masters Premier. It literally is. There's something that's either going to try to beat it, counter it, or you have it on your team. Now, if you see the comparison here, Metagross with Psychic versus... The one thing I really want to look at for the summary is that the comparison with Psychic versus Meteor Mash. Now, if you take a look at Psychic, Psychic does make it to where, like, not really the 2 shield. Well, if you switch into it, see what happens. You actually lose... with shields, not having Meteor Mash, just because Meteor Mash is so oppressive. You need Earthquake to win the mirror. So if you can run Psychic Meteor Mash, just be very aware. If you run that variation, we'll run that, but like you'll just like we'll run it, but we'll see. As you see, Psychic doesn't really flip a lot of things. You pretty much beat everything in the same scenarios. What reason everyone's saying is that if you're, well, actually I didn't see the 2 ones, but in the zeros, see against Gyarados, you'll still lose against Gyarados. With Energy Lead, you can beat it. For example, in Energy Lead, you can beat Gyarados, but like I said, you're better off with just Shield Advantage. Now, here's what I have. Now, in the 2-to-1s, if you see the 2-to-1s, things kind of flip. I didn't cover the 2-to-1s. 2-to-1s, it's kind of like the one. In 2-to-1s, up a shield, as you see, lots of matchups you flip. As long as you have Shield Advantage. Charizard is kind of a rarity, but you'll beat it with the Psychic version. So, like, Psychic does flip a few matchups, not many though. Psychic is incredibly situational. The big thing of reason with Psychic is because Psychic takes 1 more bullet punch to get to. As you see here, if you see the comparison, Psychic is 55. I believe Psychic's 55 energy. Let's see, go straight Psychic. So if you go over here, Psychic is 55 energy. Yes, 55 energy. Meteor Mash is 50 energy. You'll be surprised at how much that 1 bullet punch actually makes a difference. So, yeah, like I said, you'll be really surprised just how much that bullet punch makes a difference. Because what happens is this, you could actually stack, well, they actually take the same amount. So 50-55, if you do the math, you actually takes the same amount. The problem is you can't back-to-back Psychics. So that's what I'm talking about. You can only have up to 100 energy. You could stack 2 Meteor Mashes and back-to-back them. With Psychic, you can't do that because you can't do that with 55 energy. So if you try to back-to-back something, if you try to do back-to-back Meteor Mashes, it doesn't work. So back-to-back Meteor Mashes, you can't do it. I mean, Psychics you can't do, Meteor Mashes you can. That's because it's 55 energy. Like I said, you'll be surprised at how much 1 bullet punch makes a difference. Especially in the mirror. Now, here's what happens. Now, here's why you don't really want... Now, here's what happens. The reason why you want Earthquake is because of the mirror. The mirror is where you're really going to look at it. So, if you don't have Earthquake, you lose the mirror. And there's a lot of scenarios where if you do go Metagross on Metagross, and it's very likely the opponent's Metagross is carrying Earthquake. The one that doesn't have Earthquake loses a lot. In other words, you only win up 1 shield or up the 2-to-1s. That's a lot of scenarios. So, and if you look at the scenarios, in the mirror, you lose a lot of ground. So, they're not even convincing matchups. Oh, 370 and a 280 rating is ridiculous. Like, it's not good. So in summary, be very careful whether you use the Psychic or like which moveset you use, because whether you like Psychic or Meteor Mash matters. You could use Psychic and Earthquake, but Psychic and Earthquake, if you see the mirror with Psychic and Earthquake, yes, you lose simultaneously. However, look at these other matchups. So you will lose the 1s and you lose the 2s. And you lose the 2-to-1s. So if they're up a shield, if they have shield advantage or if it's the 1 shield, you will lose. And what happens a lot is because you use Psychic and Psychic takes more energy than Mirror Match, it's not likely you'll be in this scenario. If they're even up one Bullet Punch, so let's say this thing's hurting, so let's say Metagross has half of its HP left, but it has one Bullet Punch. Watch what happens. You lose nearly every scenario. And what I mean by like every scenario, but like every close. Not the 2 shield, you likely won't have 2 shields in this scenario. You'll lose the ones in the zeros. Now if you're in the 2 shield with like this is like almost impossible. So like, well, this is kind of impossible to like the way it plays out. But to play out in like the zeros or the ones, as you see in the zeros and ones, you will lose. It comes pretty close, and that's if Metagross actually has more than half of its energy. Watch how much of a difference it makes. You lose a lot. You still lose a lot. So there's a lot of scenarios, like I said, in the mirror you need Earthquake. If you don't have Earthquake, you lose. And there's even instances with like Meteor Mash and Earthquake where you're going to lose regardless. So if we run over this, that's why I just want to emphasize, because there's a lot of debate whether you want to use Psychic and Earthquake. In my opinion, there's nothing wrong with it. Psychic covers a lot of things Meteor Mash doesn't, but Meteor Mash, as you saw in the Matrix, it doesn't really flip a lot of things. And in the mirror, it puts you at a huge risk in the mirror if you don't have Meteor Mash, because Psychic takes more energy. Because you'll have more, unless your opponent calls both of your baits perfectly, you won't get to an Earthquake. You will die. Because you won't be, you could try to go straight, you'll never make it to an Earthquake, so you'll never go the same. Even if you have energy advantage, you would need to be up 2 bullet punches. So up here, if you have 1 bullet punch ahead, this doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make a difference. It still doesn't make a huge difference. See? And everything will have to be like exact. So if you need to have bullet punch you need to have 1 bullet punch full of energy to like change it. So if you have energy lead, yes, but if you've been expending a lot of energy with Psychic, it's very likely you don't have energy advantage. It's likely you won't have energy advantage. It's a very dangerous game to play. So again, just make sure you guys decide which one you want to do. Psychic isn't the wrong moveset. Like I said, I prefer Meteor Mash. There's no real wrong answer, but Meteor Mash just hits so much harder, and it gives you, it's 1 bullet punch. It costs less energy overall, and there's a lot more play you have with Meteor Mash versus Psychic. Psychic does cover your Mud Boys, but even then, Psychic will lose. So if you give it Psychic, see there's still play with Metagross. If you have it Psychic, then see the matchups aren't much better. Even if you do have a Psychic Metagross, even if Metagross does have Psychic. Especially against Gyarados. If you have Gyarados, here's a comparison. Gyarados, you have Psychic. This is the result. Gyarados wins a lot of scenarios. If you give it Meteor Mash, this is what happens. So you see you beat everything but the 1s and the 2s, so if they have shield advantage, you still lose the same thing. See? Oh wait, yeah, you still lose the same matchups even if you have Meteor Mash. See what happens? Still the same thing. These are very situational. It's like Psychic is a very situational thing. And usually it's very, like I said, decide which one you want to do. Metagross is best used in the switch and the closer, and it's incredibly powerful. You don't have one, there's no real substitute for it. You could probably substitute it with Magnezone, but if I had to ask, like some people have asked me like, what would you substitute? You can't use Metagross, Magnezone. Magnezone is your best bet because it beats Metagross, it beats Togekiss. It pretty much functions like a Metagross, but just not as dominant in a lot of positions. So Master League Premier Cup, as you see, it's not. Of course, Metagross is #1. You won't see a lot of like Magnezone. Let's see. Let's just go overall. Overall, the zone, Magnezone. Oh wait. I think I went way over it. But yeah, if I had to substitute, definitely Magnezone. Oh wait, whoops. Magnezone ranks at 15. Strong in the lead. Like I said, not that bad. It's not great as a switch. You could still take shields with it, but it's just not as good as Metagross. That's the video, guys. Again, you guys have a great day. I hope you guys have plenty of fun in Master League. I'll be doing more of these Master Premier Cup videos to cover a majority of like what the relevant meta is and maybe some spice picks later. You guys have a great day.